Hi guys, welcome back to my kitchen. This week I'm going to share with you my recipe for a sourdough whole wheat bread, and I'm going to walk you through the entire process. First off, if you have a starter, great. Go ahead and feed that starter, get it ready. You want a robust starter that's nice and bubbly before you even begin mixing up your dough. If you don't have a starter and would like to make one homemade, I will leave a link in the description box below with my step-by-step process on how to make a sourdough starter right at home with just flour and water. I'm also gonna leave a link for this entire recipe and instructions for you in the description box as well. We're gonna put away our stand mixer today and we're gonna do what's called stretch and folds. With using this method, we only need a few things to make bread. We're gonna need a Dutch oven, we're gonna need a Banneton basket. If you don't have a Banneton basket, you can go ahead and use a colander and a piece of cloth like I'm doing here, and of course a sourdough starter in a large bowl. Let's go ahead and get our dough started. So we have 280 grams of bread flour, 280 grams of whole wheat flour, and when you're measuring your flours, if you're going to use cups, you want to make sure that you're not hard packing the flour in. Just lightly place the flour into the cups so that way you have the right amount. We have 1 cup of bubbly sourdough starter and 1.5 teaspoons of sea salt. Finally, I have 2 cups or 450 grams of water. If you're using a measuring glass like I have here, make sure that you measure your water at eye level. It makes a big difference. Now with a fork, we're just gonna go ahead and mix up our dough. Dough looks very shaggy, and again, it's a very hydrated dough. Don't be concerned. What we're gonna do is cover this and let it rest for 30 minutes. Now we're ready for our first stretch and fold. We're gonna uncover the dough, and it's still very wet, okay, but it'll be a lot more puffed out. It's a good idea, since this is such a wet dough, to wet your hands when you do this. We're gonna take one corner of the dough, stretch it up as far as you can, and fold it over itself. Turn the bowl slightly, take another corner, and do the same. We're going to repeat this 4 times. Cover the dough and let it rest for 30 minutes. We're going to do 4 sets of stretch and folds with 30-minute rest times in between each set. You'll notice that the dough gets a little bit stronger each set. Okay, so I have one ready. I'm gonna uncover it, and this is risen. And what I'm gonna do is punch it. It's gonna be really tacky, just to get the air out. Cover your surface. Get our dough out. Flour a little bit. Again, this is gonna be a really wet dough. Now we're gonna do what's called proofing, and that means that this is gonna go into the fridge for a minimum of 6 hours to chill. This will also help us give the dough a good score before we pop it into the oven. So make sure you allow it to sit for at least 6 hours in the fridge minimum. All right guys, so it's the next day. I have a Dutch oven inside the oven heating. It's going to get nice and hot for us at 450 degrees. I leave it in there for about 20 minutes before I place the bread in. That way everything's nice and steamy and ready to rise our bread. And what I did was I transferred our dough onto a piece of parchment paper, and it's scored and ready to go into the oven. Our Dutch oven is nice and hot. I'm going to remove it from the oven and place our bread directly inside, cover it, and then bake it for 30 minutes. Then after 30 minutes, I'm going to remove the lid and bake it for an additional 15 minutes. All right, so we have let our bread cool. It's been cooling for about an hour and a half. Always let your bread come to like room temperature, slightly warm, not hot, because you don't want to cut into your loaf too early. This will cause a gummy loaf, and that's the last thing we want after all this work, right? So allow your bread to cool completely and then cut it. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. And there's our bread. Nice and soft, beautiful wheat bread. So how I cut my bread is like that. And it makes the perfect piece of toast. All right, guys, so that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for joining me in the kitchen today. I hope you've enjoyed your time here. Again, you could find the recipe for the sourdough whole wheat bread and the recipe or the how-to on how to make a sourdough starter in the description box below. Have a great week ahead, and I will see you guys on the next one.